It was a scorching afternoon in Kentucky, and Mr. Charlie found himself sitting uncomfortably in the driver's seat of his silver Mercedes. The sun shone relentlessly through the windshield, turning the car into a mini furnace. Even though the air conditioner hummed steadily, it hardly made a dent in the oppressive heat. He absent-mindedly drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, frustration slowly building. It wasn't that he was particularly impatient, but the situation was starting to feel like a bad joke. Mr. Charlie was a man who liked control. After retiring from his successful banking career, he had grown accustomed to things running smoothly, whether it was a deal, a task, or his daily routine. But today, it felt as though the world was throwing small obstacles his way just to get under his skin. First, a flat tire, far from home. Second, a phone with no signal in a quiet stretch of the countryside. And now, he was stuck waiting. He groaned, tapping his fingers again against the wheel, realizing there was nothing more he could do but wait. It wasn't long before a young boy, perhaps 13 or 14, appeared on the road beside his car. He wore a faded t-shirt and old scuffed shoes, looking like he had seen more than his fair share of hard work. The boy's eyes immediately noticed the silver Mercedes parked on the side of the road, and, without hesitation, he walked over. "Got a flat, sir?" the boy asked, his voice calm, his tone friendly, as though it was the most normal thing in the world. Mr. Charlie looked up, startled by the boy's sudden appearance. There was something about him, a quiet confidence and unspoken understanding, that made Mr. Charlie feel oddly relieved, even though the situation itself wasn't improving. "Yes, I do," Mr. Charlie replied, a mix of relief and embarrassment creeping into his voice. "I've been trying to get help, but my phone's not working out here." The boy's expression softened, and he offered a small, almost knowing smile. "I can help with that," he said easily. Without waiting for further approval, he dropped to one knee beside the tire. "My grandpa taught me how to change a tire last summer. Do you have a spare?" Mr. Charlie, still taken aback by the boy's confidence and poise, nodded and pointed toward the trunk. "It's in there." The boy immediately moved to open the trunk, pulling out the necessary tools with quick practiced movements. Watching him work, Mr. Charlie felt a sense of awe. There was something about the boy, something beyond just his tire-changing skills, that struck him. The way the boy worked with such calm focus, the ease with which he moved, it was as if he had done this hundreds of times before. Mr. Charlie found himself thinking about the difference between the boy's simple, self-assured approach to life and his own meticulously planned, controlled existence. The boy's confidence wasn't loud or boastful, but quiet and sincere. And for some reason, it made Mr. Charlie feel both grateful and humbled. A few minutes later, the boy stood up, brushing off his hands. "All done," he said, offering a small but proud smile. Mr. Charlie, still in a bit of a daze, reached into his wallet and pulled out a few bills. "Here," he said, holding the money out. "I really appreciate your help. Please, take this." The boy shook his head, his expression firm but kind. "Thank you, sir, but I don't need anything. I'm just happy to help." Before Mr. Charlie could insist, the boy gave a polite wave and started to walk away, disappearing down the road. Mr. Charlie watched him go, his figure shrinking in the rearview mirror, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this brief interaction had changed something inside of him. He couldn't quite put his finger on what it was. Some quiet shift in his own heart, something he hadn't expected to feel today. As he resumed his drive home, the boy's face lingered in his thoughts. It wasn't just the tire that had struck him. It was the boy's quiet, unwavering dignity. His willingness to help without expecting anything in return. Mr. Charlie had spent decades in a world of deals and expectations, where people were always looking for something, a favor, a return on investment, something. But this boy, Elijah, had given simply because it was the right thing to do. There was a purity about it, a sincerity that left Mr. Charlie with an unfamiliar sense of awe. That evening, after a lonely dinner in his large, empty home, Mr. Charlie sat in his study. The steak and asparagus he had prepared sat cold on the side table, untouched. The only sound in the room was the steady ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. He reclined in his chair, sipping his scotch, but his thoughts kept returning to Elijah. He had met so many people in his life, colleagues, investors, employees, but nearly all of them had been involved in some kind of exchange. An unspoken agreement, a deal. But Elijah had given without any expectation of anything in return. There was something profoundly rare about that. The next morning, Mr. Charlie couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to know more about this boy. Who was he? What kind of life did he lead? What kind of family raised a boy like that? Driven by a mix of curiosity and a strange pull in his heart, Mr. Charlie set out to find Elijah. He retracted his route from the day before, stopping at small gas stations and diners, asking if anyone had seen a boy who matched the description of Elijah. After several false leads, an elderly woman at a small cafe gave him the answer he had been searching for. "That sounds like Elijah," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "He's always helping folks. Lives with his mama in Harlan." Harlan?" Mr. Charlie repeated, the name rolling off his tongue slowly as he thought for a moment. "Thank you." Harlan was a small town, tucked away in the Appalachian foothills about an hour's drive away. Mr. Charlie didn't pay much attention to the scenic beauty of the rolling hills as he drove. His mind was occupied with thoughts of the boy. What kind of home did Elijah have? What kind of life did he lead? When Mr. Charlie finally arrived in Harlan, the town felt quieter than he had expected, calm in a way that felt almost peaceful. The streets were simple, the houses modest, each one with a story of its own. He asked around until an old man directed him to a small house on the edge of town, near the woods. The house was weathered, the porch sagging slightly, but it was clear that it was well cared for. Mr. Charlie parked in front of the house, his hands suddenly clammy. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say or how to even begin. With a deep breath, he approached the door and knocked. A moment later, the door creaked open, revealing a woman in her early 40s. She looked tired, but there was a warmth to her eyes, a kindness that immediately put Mr. Charlie at ease. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice gentle and curious. Mr. Charlie cleared his throat, unsure of how to explain his reason for visiting. "Good morning. I'm sorry to bother you, but I think I met your son yesterday. Elijah, right? He helped me with a flat tire." The woman's face softened, and a smile tugged at her lips. "That sounds like my Elijah," she said. "He's always helping folks. You're the man he helped with the tire?" Mr. Charlie nodded. "Yes, that's right. I just wanted to thank him properly. He wouldn't accept anything from me." The woman smiled kindly. "He's out back. You're welcome to wait." Mr. Charlie stepped inside the house, feeling a strange, almost unfamiliar sense of warmth in the air. The home was simple, but there was a welcoming comfort to it. Nothing forced or fake. The way the woman spoke to him, the way she made him feel as though he belonged there, it was something he hadn't experienced in a long time. As he followed her toward the back of the house, he realized he wasn't just looking to thank Elijah. There was something more, something he hadn't fully understood yet. The woman paused and turned to him, her eyes inviting him to step further into her world. "Welcome," she said softly. Mr. Charlie felt his heart soften as he followed her, unsure of what the next part of his journey would bring, but feeling, deep down, that he was exactly where he needed to be. Charles entered and inspected the cramped quarters. Family photographs and child Elijah's hand-drawn artwork adorned the walls and the furniture was old but clean. It seemed warmer and more alive than his own home, with its clean surfaces and expensive paintings. Followed her to Elijah's backyard fence repair. The child looked up when Mr. Charlie stunned him. "Hey, mister," Elijah said, washing his pants. "What are you doing here?" Charlie smiled uneasily. "My thanks again. My mind kept thinking about how you supported me when I needed it." Shrugging, Aaliyah, "It wasn't a big deal." Charlie wanted to prove it. From the fence, Elijah watched Mr. Charlie intently. Both remained silent. Mr. Charlie felt evaluated by the boy's relaxation. "I don't think you realize what a big deal it was." Mr. Charlie broke the silence. "People don't usually help strangers without expecting something in return." Elijah tilted his head. The words bewildered him. "No, I don't see it like that. If someone needs help, and I can do it, why wouldn't I?" Charlie was amazed by the boy's logic. Yard was beyond Elijah. Poor wood linked the fence, uneven sparse grass. An ominously sagging broken chain swing set was behind the home. The Elijah family survived poverty. He intended, "You've got a good head on your shoulders, Mr. Charlie. Your mother must be proud." Elijah liked the palace. "She works. I will attempt to assist." While listening to the youngster, Mr. Charlie was quiet. He recalled his childhood house. Parents labored hard to make ends meet, teaching him perseverance. He had ignored such lessons for years due to his desire for wealth and fame. This yard made him strangely nostalgic and melancholy. Mr. Charlie responded, "I'd like to do something for you and your family." Elijah straightened as if frightened. "We're okay, Mr. Nothing's needed." Mr. Charlie remarked, "It's not about need. Right is important. Thanks, and I'd like to repay the favor." While washing her hands on a patio dish towel, his mother stopped him. "Elijah, you better come inside and wash up before lunch," sobbed. So she glanced at Charlie. "Want to join us?" "Thanks, but it's basic." He was surprised by her offer, but her sincerity made him accept. "I'd like that," he murmured, following her inside. Grilled vegetables and fresh bread scented the kitchen. Little table with mismatched seats was thoughtfully set. In the rural surroundings, Mr. Charlie sat, feeling weird in his tight suit. After hand-washing at the sink, Elijah joined them, always smiling. While dining, Mr. Charlie joined discussions. Elijah talked class, friends, and engineering. Mother heartily praised community defenders. Looking at the words, Mr. Charlie felt warm for the first time in years. This little house, full of joy and real connection, made his luxury home seem cold and lifeless. Mr. Charlie approached Elijah's mother after lunch table cleanup. "You've done a remarkable job raising him," he remarked. "He's got more heart than most people I know." Grinning, she thanked me. "Say thanks. Though we've struggled, he's a nice guy. We now value minor things." Mr. Charlie nodded, in thought. He wouldn't overstep, but he'd assist. This family reminded him of his unmet desire. One day, Mr. Charlie left their home with clarity he hadn't felt in years. Planned in his villa, non-charitable. The boys' selflessness and family resilience were praised. Their mother and Elijah deserved more than broken fences and antiquated furnishings. They earned praise for their everyday strength. The next morning, Mr. Charlie phoned repeatedly, notified former colleagues, contractors, and suppliers. Plan made by midday. Workers and trucks arrived at Elijah's residence a week later. While Elijah and his mother watched in surprise, Mr. Charlie ordered sidewalk repair with a clipboard. Elijah's mother screamed, "You didn't have to do this," as the squad unloaded. "We've managed fine on our own." Monsieur Charlie stared at her. "You've excelled. You made it. But you offered me something I overlooked. I'll repay." Standing close to his mother, Elijah thought quietly, Mr. Charlie bowed to him. I learned from Elijah. It's not about money to help. My goal is to be there for you. Weeks later, the home was altered. The rotting porch was rebuilt with wood, replace the rusty backswing, and repair the roof. Painting, floor cleaning, and kitchen equipment updates were done inside. Mr. Charlie advised Elijah to rest from shifting boards and cleaning trash during renovations. Mr. Charlie grinned. Your job is to play kid. Yet Elijah slipped out to watch the workers measure, cut, and build, his eyes widening. Joe, a beefy worker, volunteered to measure wood planks for him. Elijah started asking about tools and constructing with passion. Overlooking, Mr. Charlie was proud. First time in years, he felt meaningful. He remembered his goals before boardrooms and investment portfolios in the boy's energy. As night fell, project completion loomed, family astonished by the porch improvement. After telling Charlie, Elijah's mother cried, It's no longer a house, home. I can't thank you enough. Charlie shook his head gently. You have. You restored family, connection, and purpose. You deserve thanks. Renovations concluded in joy. After seeing the improvements, neighbors brought smiles, fresh bread, jam, and a potted plant. Elijah laughed when showing his pals the new swing set and yard rooms he painted. An old house acquired vitality. Mr. Charlie observed from the sturdy new railing on the front porch. Watching others succeed brought him pleasure he hadn't felt in years. Elijah's mother provided iced tea. Smiley got it. You've done more than fix a house, she replied softly. You've given us hope, and I think you found something for yourself too. Mr. Charlie sipped, nodded, saying, I have. I sought wealth, status, and power for years. But nothing feels like this. Nothing filled me like this. Elijah joyfully joined them on the terrace at sunset. His thoughts were on Charlie. Introducing Mr. Charlie, he said, Your aid has been on my thoughts. I dream about it. My objective is to help. Matt gently grabbed Elijah's shoulder. You are Elijah. You began it by giving. Never lose. The sky turned yellow to orange. Post-day warmth came from connection, thankfulness, and purpose. Charlie drove Elijah and his mother. Charlie remembered his mother's weeping smile and the boy's wide grin. Driving away, he noticed more. All their lives restarted. New changes occurred in succeeding weeks. After locating the building, Elijah was excited. Charles had him watch home renovators. Elijah drank everything to learn. Mr. Charlie returned to Harlan. More like home than traveling, visiting. He rejoined their life. He felt good for the first time in years, as part of something bigger. In a little community with a big heart, a young boy's kindness taught an old man vital life lessons. Giving is more important than having.